Welcome back to the Daily Dose, as always brought to you by Give'emHellBrigham.com and CougarSportsInsider.com, part of the 24/7 Sports Network. I am your host, Jeff Hansen, and I want to start off the show with a sincere thank you to everybody. We're now 1 week into the Daily Dose, and the support has been overwhelming. Thank each of you who have subscribed so much. Thank you for liking and sharing the videos. If you have yet to do so, please subscribe to the channel so you don't miss a daily dose ever. Thank you so much. Once again, sincerely as I can possibly mean it. Today, I want to talk about win totals. BYU's win total has been released by the first sports book of the year, and they have it at 6 wins, not 6.5, not 5.5, and that's going to come into play as we look at whether we bet the over or the under on 6 wins this year for the Cougars. If we pull up the schedule, I like the over going into the season, and I think worst case scenario, BYU can muster out a push for you as long as you're able to get this line at 6 games. We go through the schedule. I think there's 2 wins to start off the season in Sam Houston and Southern Utah. At Arkansas, that's going to be a tough game. The Hogs got the best of BYU a year ago without question. However, if you look at Kalani Sitake's track history against teams like Arkansas that are good, big, physical, and that blew out BYU the year before, 2017, Wisconsin came to Provo and pummeled the Cougars. 2018, BYU returned the trip, went back to Madison, and got the best of a top 10 team in Wisconsin. Similar story with Baylor a couple of years ago. BYU went down to Waco and got beat handily by the Bears. Last year, Baylor returns the trip, comes to Provo, and BYU surprises them and gets the best of the Bears in double overtime. Don't feel good enough saying that BYU will beat Arkansas, but I do feel confident in saying that that game will be much better than it was a year ago. At Kansas, I think Coach Leipold is the real deal, and I think that this Kansas team is a new Kansas team. I don't think that they're the Kansas that we've seen over the course of the last decade. However, are they good enough to repeat the first half of what they did last year, or are they going to be closer to the team that lost 6 out of 7 games to close out the 2023 season? I think Kansas is going back to a bowl. I think Kansas is very good. I don't know that Kansas is back yet. I think at worst, this is a 50-50 toss-up game for the Cougars. I'm going to give BYU the edge, but this one could go either way. So let's count that as the 3rd win so far for BYU. Cincinnati, I think this is a brutal matchup and a brutal situation for the Bearcats. From a talent standpoint, Cincinnati and BYU are close. However, the environment that Cincinnati will be walking into in the first home Big 12 conference game for the Cougars presumably will be a late night kick. Lavelle Edwards Stadium will be bonkers. I like BYU to get the win because of the home field advantage. If this were a neutral site, I think Cincinnati and BYU, that's a 50-50 game. But because it's in Provo, I'm saying BYU gets the win there, and I feel really good about 4 wins coming out of the month of September. After a bye week to open October, BYU will travel to TCU. I don't think that the Cougars will beat TCU. TCU, obviously, with Sonny Dykes, is a different program than they were a few years ago. In the tail end of the Gary Patterson era, TCU is the real deal, and BYU has struggled historically playing inside Fort Worth. Let's chalk that up as a loss. Texas Tech, I think that Coach McGuire has that team as a dark horse contender for a Big 12 championship this year. I think that the game, because of it being in Provo, I think it will be a difficult game. It will be a close game, but I certainly don't feel good enough saying that BYU gets that win for sure. At Texas, look, BYU's got a winning streak against the Longhorns. They're not going to be intimidated going into DKR and playing Texas. Coach Kalani Sitake was teammates with Coach Steve Sarkisian. He's not going to be intimidated by this coaching staff. BYU has proven that they can beat Texas in Texas. They've proven they can beat Texas in Provo. When Taysom Hill was galloping all around the Longhorns, BYU proved that they can whip Texas. I don't feel good enough saying this is a surefire win for a win total bet, but at worst, I think this is a 50-50 game. I get that Texas is a better team than they were in 2014 with Coach Strong, but I don't know that I'm ready to jump on the board that Texas is back, but I'll call this one a 50-50 game. At West Virginia, look, by this point in the season, first week of November, I don't know if Neil Brown will be the coach of West Virginia. I love the Mountaineer program. I think that they are a fun team with a ton of potential as a program, but I don't know that Coach Brown is the guy to lead that program. I don't know if he can turn things around. I don't know if he will still have a job in November. I like that as BYU's 5th win of the season. Iowa State in Provo, tough mid-November travel all the way across the country for Iowa State. Coach Campbell's as good as there is in the country, but I don't think that this Iowa State team is going to be as good as they were with Breece Hall and Brock Purdy a few years ago. I think this one will be a struggle. I like that as BYU's 6th win. That gets you to a push. 6 wins gets you to a push. If this was a 6.5 line, I'd be a little bit more weary about hitting the over, but at 6, I like it. You end the season with Oklahoma. I think that this, by the time I guess Oklahoma comes to Provo, there's going to be real questions of motivation. If they're not in college football playoff contention, are the Sooners going to be motivated? Are they going to be motivated to play a conference game against a conference opponent that they've never seen before? Are they going to be looking ahead to the SEC? All of these are questions. I mean, and then you get into the environment of a night game, presumably at LaVell Edwards Stadium in November. It could be cold. It could be snowy. It could be a lot of different things. That's a 50-50 game to me. It really is. I think Oklahoma is, without a question, the most talented team on BYU's schedule this year. But because of non-talent factors, I'm not ready to say that that's a surefire loss. At Oklahoma State, again, I think that one's kind of a 50-50 game going into it. Oklahoma State lost a lot out of the transfer portal. By week 12 of the season, they're going to have figured out who they are, and they'll be either humming or they will be struggling. It's difficult to project week 12 on May 7th, but on May 7th, that game looks like a toss-up game to me as well. So BYU, I have 6 wins, and then you have 3 or 4 toss-up games mixed in there as well. Even if BYU loses all of those toss-up games, you can still get a push out of this season total bet. I think BYU can steal one of those 50-50 games and leave this season with a 7-5 record, going into a bowl game with a chance to get to 8-5 in their first season as a Big 12 conference member. Why do I feel like that? Mostly because of the addition of Jay Hill. Jay Hill makes this team different. If you look at these past BYU teams from the last 2 or 3 years, the downfall, even when BYU in 2020 and 2021 was winning games, the downfall, the Achilles heel was always the defense. They were vanilla. They struggled in coverage. They didn't get after the quarterback. They had no pass rush, and they were one of the worst tackling teams in the country. If Jay Hill gets this team to even average performance, I think that's good enough for an extra win on the season. Jay Hill's the real deal. He is as good of a coach as BYU has had over the last 20 years, and I think that he is going to transform this defense. It's going to take him time, not going to happen overnight, but it will be tangibly better on day one than it was a year ago, even if that is just an average performing defense. Because of Jay Hill, I like BYU and over 6 wins in their first season in the Big 12 Conference. Once again, thank you for the support. Thank you. Please subscribe to the channel if you haven't. Please like and share this video. And until next time, give them hell.